Let's work.
The kettlebell swing, a rapid hinge and one of the best conditioning exercises we know for the body. It will condition your spine, condition your hips, and condition your grip like no other. It really helps fortify the whole pillar system because it demands so much from a repetition standpoint. It's one of the few exercises that you really don't need that heavy of a weight, and you can move ballistically and with really high repetitions. There's challenges out there that will have you do 10,000 swings in a month if you dare try. So it's an incredible fortifying exercise, but it does come at a cost. So this series has really kind of helped build a safe hinge from where we left off with the deadlift. Because in reality, the kettlebell swing is a rapid ballistic hinge, and it's fortified from the deadlift. And so that's where we will start, and then we will go into both variations of the swing as well as into the snatch. Okay, the kettlebell deadlift. Different than the kettlebell squat, okay? This is a nice beginner exercise to work on fortifying the hinge pattern. And to remind yourself, a hinge pattern is the preferred pattern for lifting any weight from the ground. If you're gonna lift a person, a rock, a box, a bed frame, you will utilize a hinge strategy because it's really what we need to get our arms into a low position. So lifting where the center of the weight is in low position is the hinge. So let's go into that pattern. Okay. In the hinge position, we are going to have the shins be vertical some so that the knee is approximately at the mid-foot, okay? It's not gonna be excessive, okay? If he's too deep, this becomes some funky looking squat, okay? If it's too shallow, coming right through here, it's straight on the backside, seeing how flexible Aaron is into more or less like almost like a Romanian deadlift. It's right in the middle where the shin's gonna have a vertical position. So knee is at mid-foot. The knee is gonna be bent somewhere between 60 and 90 degrees, depending on your limb length. And we're gonna achieve more or less a greater sign in this position so that the hip is right in between your shoulder and your knee. Rest, okay? That hinge position requires a long spine, a long neck. You can get away with a lot of variations of deadlifting. And if you look at famous powerlifters in the past, deadlift 1,000 pounds, you'll see some form positions that kind of break these rules. I'm not meant to go into discussion of how to achieve a 1,000-pound deadlift. There are plenty of people out there that deliver that message at a high level. Follow them if you want to go deeper into powerlifting. But this is for swing excellence, for conditioning excellence, and to develop a very resilient spine. So let's keep that in mind because it's not about right and wrong right now. This is about achieving a good looking hinge so that we can ballistically move with the swing. So let's go back to the hinge again. Into a kettlebell deadlift. His eyes will be forward just a little bit. His neck is in neutral. His spine's in neutral. And again, we look at this in our bulletproof continuum. We develop it with a lot of our assistance drills. And here we are with the kettlebell dead. So as you start thinking about swinging, you're going to pull your arms back, going to achieve that proximal stability, and then rapidly hinge upward, okay? Now, as we start going from a deadlift into a deadlift with a little bit more speed, the person's showing some ability to be able to do a kettlebell swing with. Let's do 3 reps right there, okay? This should be nearly perfect if you're going to start doing a kettlebell swing. You should have a short foot rooted in that position. Again, your knee is about mid-foot, and your hips are making a greater sign so that your hips are right in the middle between your knee and shoulder height. If you're able to get into the deadlift and look strong, look good in that position, and rapidly accelerate into an upright position, then it's time to start swinging the kettlebell, which is really just the ballistic repetitive motion of this hinge pattern. So let's go to our starting point, the initial part of a 2-hand swing with a 2-hand hike. The hike position. The bell needs to be in front of you by about a foot, foot and a half with it rock backward. That rock backward sets the tone of how you're going to drive that bell behind you, and you're putting your weight a little bit more posteriorly so that the boss the movement of the hips. Okay? Again, long neck, long spine, eyes a little bit forward. He's locked and loaded, more or less. That initial hike position is right here. It must start right here. The initial hike and the final park look identical. So he will start and end this exact position. Rest. Okay, I'm going to give Aaron a few rest points so that he doesn't maintain tension for too long. So it is important after these high tension drills to shake things out, shake out your hands and shake out your feet. That's really critical, both with high tension strength as well as high tension ballistics. Okay, going back to the swing. So we're in this height position. His initial pass, the end parts of his forearm, the distal forearm, is going to reach the upper part of his groin. So let's do a height pass and right back to a part. Good. Let's do that 3 times. You see, I can see the bell poking out right in the backside here. Rest. So I'll explain this to people that you need the distal part of your forearm. I'll paint this right here. This part of your forearm, I want you to reach your upper thigh into your groin. Okay? It's really critical that this is high. If it's low, if it's a low pass, your back stress skyrockets. Not by a little, but by a lot, and will lead to an injury for sure. Now, Aaron has a strong spine and no acute injury that I know of, so he's going to demonstrate this poorly. So I don't want you to do it this way, but watch how he has a low pass. That's a low pass. This is going to hurt the back. You're going to get excessive flexion at the spine with a very long moment arm. If you remember physics back in high school, moment arm is force times the arm length. If it's a low pass, that belt is away from the spine way too far. And that length will skyrocket the moment, the torque at the spine, and lead to injury. Okay? So it's critical to have a posterior line focus with the height, and it's critical to have a pass that's very high up so that your forearm hits the top part of your groin for a nice, safe, compact swing. The phrase we'll use a lot when it comes to swing is to tame the arc. If the arc of the swing is excessively low, your back stress skyrockets. Okay, so let's see how a two-hand swing looks its capacity. Once we have the hike, pass, park doing okay, the patient, the student understands how to get in and out of that position with a good solid hinge, and they have strength in that hinge because they can stay there and move the bell in that way. It's time to do a swing. So before we do a swing, I like to first demonstrate a common drill we'll have to set up is we will do a snap back. So we're going to go from a tall position into a snap back position, and that's going to be into a position that feels like you're about to do a broad jump. And then out of that snap back position, rapidly come to a tall plank. At the tall plank, right here, a tall plank is straight knee, straight hip, ribs down, strong mid back, and then his arms will be away from him, mimicking where the bell is going to lead. Okay, so again, a snap back, that's the hinge, and then a strong, fast, tall, rapid plank. This gives the person the idea of kind of how am I going to rapidly do this? And now we do the same thing with the bell. What people will tend to do with the kettlebell is they want to lift it with their arms. And we want to remind them the hips need to be the boss of this movement. So really feel like you're generating the majority of the power with your hips and let the arms just be along for the ride. So we're going to watch Aaron do 5 kettlebell swings with 2 hands. And rest. Good. Very good. So we saw him hike that bell and then generate power with his hips, and then the arms just elevated because he put that power in the belt. It was a horizontal projection of power, and the hands were just along the right. As they rose up, he came back down. Okay? So let's get into, imagine we have an imaginary bell. It's out in front of you in your top part of the position. Let's go like this. So let's talk about a few things that kind of violate a few of these principles that I spoke of. Okay? Again, if we're thinking about the swing, it's really just a deadlift and a plank rapidly. Then if we violate any of the principles of the deadlift and violate any of the principles of the plank with speed, then we're looking at an unsafe swing. So let's talk about how this vertical plank can go wrong. It can go wrong with hyperextension. Okay? We lose an anterior line stability in this position. It can go wrong with an awkward neck position. A failure to achieve a neutral neck and a neutral spine is a failure to have a good, solid, stable, tall plank. He can go wrong by having his knees bent. If he loses this connection of his body, again, he's not fortifying himself into a tall plank. Okay? he can be pitched with his hips. Okay, so if his hips go back, that means his glutes soft, which in turn means he's not achieving that principle of proximal stability that we're looking for with a tall pillar-like plank. Rest. So neutral neck, neutral spine. Arms are projected horizontally because that's the force of the bell, and having the hips and knees and feet stacked in a tall pillar plank. So those are all the lessons of a really good looking tall plank. And really the bottom part needs to have the principles of a sound kettlebell deadlift or a sound hinged position. And the top part is a tall plank. So now that you appreciate both the deadlift and the plank, let's look at it again. Let's see how well Aaron's able to project that power horizontally at the bottom and achieve a tall plank at the top. Listen to his breathing. Rest. So at the top part, since that plank is so critical to rapidly get, that's where we'll achieve our Valsalva effect. Okay, we achieve the Valsalva effect by breathing in through our nose on the way down and breathing out through our mouth on the way up at the apex of the hinge. Now notice I said the apex of the hinge. So we're going to have Aaron demonstrate a swing without the use of the bell in slow motion. And we'll press pause here at a few key spots. So as he hikes at the bottom, we're going to pause right here. In this position, again, appreciate the greater sign his body is achieving with this bottom part of the deadlift of the hinge. This is where he would breathe in through the nose. Now, as he goes into an elevated position, he's going to maintain proximal stability by hinging first. That sequential proximal stability is so critical. At the apex of that hinge, that's where he'll breathe out through his mouth, through pursed lips, and then that force goes into the bell and into his hands away in extended position. Okay, that sequence is absolutely critical. Let's look at a sequence. Let's finish that sequence. So that would be the positive part of this swing. Now let's look at the negative. He will reverse those steps, essentially playing chicken with the bell. And as it gets close to his body, he starts to hinge. And it goes right in that low position. Again, his distal wrist is making contact with his upper groin. And then he's bringing it down into a safe position. Rest. So again, at the bottom part of the hinge, you breathe in through the nose and allows you to get tight. And then you express out Valsalva at the top of the hinge through pursed lips, outward through your mouth. And that in and out rhythmic breathing achieves a very stable spine as well as good power development in a horizontal projection of force. Okay, so let's look at that. Now that you're appreciating all those little nuances together, I want you to think about that phrase of sequential proximal stability to see how well he's able to maintain a hip dominant position and letting the bell horizontally project. He's not really lifting the bell. We're not seeing the elbows bend or the wrist flex. We're not seeing the shoulder blades raise. We're not seeing this really kind of funky version of an arm dominant activity. This is a hip dominant activity and a horizontal projection of force. So with that appreciation, let's watch 5 more times, 5 more reps here. Rest. Good. So I'm not going to have Aaron do this because it's actually very unsafe to demonstrate too long of an arc, but that is a tame arc. Let's see where it can go wrong. Okay, so at the top of the hinge, okay, what we'll see is if you fail to maintain that arc tame or that proximal stability, you'll see the person hinge first. So if he hinges first, now you see how long, hold right there, you see how long that bell is to his hips? Let's just call this maybe upwards of 4 feet long. That's a long torque. That's a failure of taming the arc. Where what I want him to do is to reverse the steps that we had. He's going to bring that bell much closer to his body. Now, when he starts to hinge, the bell is only a foot away. Can you see how different that arc is? So show me an arc that's 4. And then now if he continues that, you'll see how the bell has to go very low, and we'll see this really over-exaggerated long arc swing that puts a tremendous amount of stress on the low back. This is an absolute no-no. And if we're seeing kettlebells done in this way, stop doing it. We're trying to hurt the person. Guaranteed they don't feel good, and guaranteed it's not a very powerful swing by any means. So we have to maintain that close relationship of the bell to the center of your mass so that the torque on the spine is low, and that way allows power from the hips to propel safely. That's absolutely critical we maintain that. Like I said, I'm not going to have Aaron demonstrate that because it's pretty unsafe to do. I want you to appreciate the taming of the arc that's needed when we do that. Okay, once we have the two-handed swing down pretty good and you feel competent with it, you're able to do several sets of 5 to 10 reps, even upwards of 100 to even 200 swings with the medium-sized bell. It's time to start working on some single arm swings. Okay, as a little mini step, we like single leg Romanian deadlifts for a good reason. It teaches balance, it teaches control, and it teaches a strong hinge. It also focuses on anti-rotation stability. Okay, so let's demonstrate a single leg RDL just for the purpose of coaching a single arm swing. Okay, as we're able to do this, this shows that he has the stability and balance to do it. Now let's do it with one hand. As we're able to do this, this is showing the anti-rotation strength that's required before we start swinging a bell with one hand. Rest. If we're able to do that, a single leg Romanian deadlift, it's okay if you have a little bit of balance and support. But if you're able to maintain good position with one hand on the bell, you are showing yourself the fortitude to be able to handle a single arm swing. Because the difference between a two-hand swing and a single arm swing is that now that single arm is putting that power on one side and you have to stabilize that. You have to anti-rotate because the force of the belt is trying to rotate you and you have to resist that. So crawling exercises and single arm planking exercises are great preludes to unilateral strength development such as the military press and single arm front squat, but also the single leg RDL with one hand. Those unilateral exercises help us determine whether or not someone has the strength fortitude to handle a ballistic motion with an offset load, such as the single arm swing. The two-hand swing puts the load on the hips and sees how well they can do with the rapid ballistic. The single arm swing will help create a ton of fortitude around the core system, that pillar system that stops us from rotating. So recognize it still demands a lot from the hips, but it asks a lot more from our anti-rotation system. So let's take a look at how that looks. So single arm swing from Aaron. Here we go. Watch 5. Rest. Looks just like a two-hand swing, except he's only holding on with one hand. And hopefully the pattern of that looks the same from you, the viewer, dead on, and not him excessively rotating in some awkward fashion. We'll lose position in our knee, lose position in our hips, and we'll lose position in our spine, which will lead to injury. And for, probably the biggest point is we're not strengthening what our intention is to strengthen and fortify. We want to fortify that anti-rotation system. That means it needs to resist that pattern. So his arm was here for a reason. It helps him understand what root it is. That arm can open up some. So let's show a little more of an open left arm without excessively going into a rotation. Okay? So he can bring this arm out a little bit. Some people have a favorite of kind of pulling the arm here in this position. Some people like holding it right here. Either are okay in this world. What we don't want is it rotated. Okay? Now, as the weight gets really heavy, it's okay to have a small amount of rotation. Okay? When that weight gets to be with the one arm swing, gets north of say 32 to 40 to 44 kilos for a man, or maybe even 24, 28 kilos for a lady, which is really a heavy single arm swing. You're going to see some small amounts of rotation. Okay, and this is where it's the judgment of the practitioner, the judgment of the teacher in front. You need to ask yourself, is this achieving a safe swing or not? And we're going to use the phrase excessive rotations. No, but small deviations will be okay. So let's watch Aaron do a much heavier swing with a 32 kilo bell. There's going to be just a little bit of subtle rotation. Good. Okay, so to remind you, you have probably about 30 degrees of lumbar rotation, and you add another 50, 55, even 60 degrees of, say, thoracic rotation. That's a lot of rotation capacity we have in the spine. So when we say anti-rotate, we don't mean zero rotation. We just mean keep it at a minimum. And so right there, Aaron probably offered just a few degrees of rotation at the bottom of the hinge, but at the top of the swing, he looked pretty stacked on. He was not separated at all. So a small amount of movements is going to be okay, but it needs to look safe. It needs to look symmetrical from right to left. And it needs to be pretty advanced to really start doing some heavy single arm swings. Okay. Let's start looking at a few other pearls to help improve the swing. So with this next one, we're going to use an RX pad. Okay? The RX pad is meant to help the teacher coach the person how to pull that hinge back. Okay? When we're doing that hinge, a lot of people have a hard time hinging. They want to squat it. Okay? They want to have the knees excessively forward. That's probably going to be the most common error that we'll see is when someone has a good-looking deadlift and they have a good-looking squat. When they start moving quickly through the deadlift, they want to utilize the squat pattern for speed and not use the hinge pattern for speed. And I'd say that's probably the most common. So this is why we do that hike pass park drill. So he's going to do the hike pass and he's going to hit that RX pad with the bell. Okay, this is going to help. Go and hit 3 times. Okay, this is going to help him coach. You need to pull that bell back. Now we're going to have him swing, and his goal will be to hit this pad each time. And he won't be able to hit the pad with the squat pattern. He's going to have to push the hips back to hit it each time. So watch as I have him do that. And his goal is to touch and touch and touch. Go and show me a squat pattern. And he's not touching. And he's not touching. And go ahead, come on, get the butt back. There we go. Good. And rest. Okay. So that simple drill can help give an external cue of where the practitioner needs to move in order to create the ballistic using a hinge pattern rather than a squat pattern. And why do we do that? Squat patterns are good for vertical position. The hinge pattern is excellent at fortifying the horizontal projection of power. And really all you have to do is look at a broad jump, find out what position are you at the bottom of your broad jump. Aaron's about to do a 12-foot jump that way. Let's see what shape his body looks like. So if he's pitched that way, he's going to go into a broad, and that's the pattern. That's how he's going to deliver a horizontal projection of force. If he's going to do a vertical projection of force, especially with some resistance in his body, he's going to keep his spine a little bit taller to propel himself up. Okay? So recognize if he has, say he has a lot of weight, he has a piece of concrete in his hand, and he's going to heave that overhead. His trunk is going to stay more vertical, which means his lower body has to stay more stacked underneath him. He's going to utilize a squat to propel that overhead. But if we're propelling an object horizontally, we're going to get our chest over our toes and get into that hinge position. So these little nuances are a very big one because you'll find a lot of people are not good at rapid hinges. They like rapid squats. And that's exactly the population that needs this the most. The ones that have well-fortified squats, but they don't have necessarily well-fortified hinges. And this is maybe where back injuries and knee issues come from, is an overdominancy of one pattern. Okay, so we talked about taming the arc. We talked about kind of hitting a pad. You can use a pad like this, or you can use really any object. A clipboard will work too, to kind of help with that hinge. Let's go into another nuance of the swing progression. So the swing of being a rapid hinge is working on the projection of force. If that force continues and we guide that bell overhead, it turns into a kettlebell snatch. So let's look at a snatch here. So we're going to pick up the weight. You'll see that the beginning part of it is still set up the same. He's still in this hinge position. He's nice and tight. He's rocking back as if he's going to hike it the same way, but the bell is going to end up somewhere else. Good. And bring it down. Good. So the snatch is really just an extension of the swing. We're taming the arc. We are not going to let it come out here in front of us, but rather we are going to bring that bell. We are going to bend the elbow. We're going to pull it up, and then we're going to pierce it overhead into a locked overhead position. The snatch is probably the most advanced ballistic exercise that we do. The hard style snatch is much, much different than the Girevoy Sport kettlebell snatch that you'll see in the Russian kettlebell sport activity. This is a very different style, and this style that we teach is what we call a hard style. So let's see 3 snatches again from Aaron as he goes in this position. You'll see the bottom of each snatch look exactly like a swing, which is why we're teaching it in this segment. Although the snatch is quite difficult, if you have a very fortified swing, the snatch can be quite easy. And that's exactly our advice to the practitioner of developing a swing. Fortify the swing so that for ladies, it's upwards of a 16 kilo bell, if not a 20 kilo bell. For men, it's upwards of 20 to 24, 28 kilo bell. And if you're able to get your swing that fortified, now you back off. For a lady, if you're able to crush 100 swings with 16 kilo bell, come back to a 12 kilo bell, which should be quite easy. And see how well can you project that bell and bring it overhead rapidly with a locked elbow, perfectly vertical. So it's kind of like we're combining the military press with the swing. You're starting off with a hinge swing, but instead you're bringing the bell close to you and you're jamming it overhead rapidly to achieve a vertical position. That vertical position challenges all aspects of your pillar strength because it's so far overhead, but all the aspects of the military press still apply, meaning stacked spine, stacked hips, your shoulder blades down, you're achieving that proximal stability focus, your wrist is straight, your elbow is straight. So all the principles of the military press, the finish of the military press, which is an overhead carry, apply, and you're rapidly getting into that position. Now, for a lot of people, their arc is too wide. If the destruction of the swing is getting too far in front of you, the destruction of the snatch is same, getting it too far in front of you. And if that torque is too big on your spine, you're likely to hurt yourself. So one of the easiest ways of taming the arc for the snatch is to do it with an object in front of you. You could use a wall. You could use a partner if they really feel gutsy. I'm going to use an Air-X pad. And the distance is going to be something like this. Aaron's going to put out his hand and make a fist. I'm going to put the pad right about, yeah. Okay, I'm going to bring the pad just like so. You're going to see him snatch and not hit the pad. I'm pretty much getting it right to his fist. So let's see Aaron snatch without hitting the pad. Rest. Okay, you see how this is similar to the swing at the start, but he's taming that arc and bringing it much closer to his body. Now, when people first do this, they're going to feel a little timid trying to snatch and press it. They're going to feel like they're going to hit it. So I don't necessarily do it with a very hard structure, like a plyo box would work really well, or really just something soft. So if they do hit it, it's not the end of the world. Clearly, you do it with a lighter bell, but this helps us tame the arc of the snatch so that it's the stress on the spine is safe, and it helps fortify the body in that overhead position. The snatch is a special exercise. It's an advanced exercise. The swing becomes our staple to fortify. The snatch we can do for advanced perturbation, advanced overhead control, advanced ballistic control. But we still preference that the swing be really the boss of the program. And you've heard me say that a few times of the boss of the pattern. The mid-back is the boss of your overhead position. The hips are the boss of the hinge. It's important that, I'm going to turn sideways for me. If the mid-back is the boss overhead. The hips are the boss of the hinge, and everything in between needs to have this pillar core function. We're achieving proximal stability at its best. Think of it like a triangle. Put your arms out in the swing. The triangle is between here, here, and here. That triangle position, okay, it achieves really what we need the most when we think about a resilient body, of not just proximal stability strength, but proximal stability stamina with repeat bouts over and over and over again. And if we have the strongest part of ourself intrinsic to the deepest part of our core here, we're going to be very hard to hurt. So as you develop these patterns, it's critical that you look for compensatory patterns that steer away from this principle. Shoulder blades hiking up, elbows bending, knees bending, hips forward, a loss of anti-rotation position. If you're losing your pillar stability, then you're training the wrong thing in that moment in time. So it's important that the reps look good. For swings and snatches, we can achieve pretty high volume work because it's rhythmic and ballistic. It's normal to see reps and sets get up to, like I said, 1 to 200 if possible. But recognize you need to have good form throughout. And because it is fast and ballistic, your heart rate's going to probably go through the roof with an appropriately sized bell. So you have to pay attention to our programming principles that we have coming to you in another video series. So today is about the swing. It's so critical that as you develop a resilient body, you are doing it with a person that is prepared to do this. This is speed and power and pairing it with stamina. That means we are at the far right of our continuum. If we have strength deficits, stability deficits, motion deficits, we are training the wrong thing. We're training compensation, or we're trying to hurt ourselves. So it's critical that if we're at this phase of the continuum, that we have really conquered a lot of our earlier phase benchmarks. And in doing so, with the right programming, the right size bell, we can achieve an excellent amount of fortification and stability stamina that helps fortify the body to become very resilient in life, resilient in sports, resilient in recreation, and frankly, hard to hurt across the continuum. So pay attention to those details, and especially the details of our programming principles that are yet to come.
Let's work. Yo.